How do Japanese kids speak Japanese? 4 to 6 years old. Let's start with this boy. He's 4.
何歳？喋って。
わかんない。
何歳っていうの？
わかんない。
4歳でしょ。
4歳。
じゃあ幼稚園のこととかママにお話しして。
幼稚園のことって何？
なんか楽しいこととか給食のお話しして。
給食いつも全部食べています。
普通におしゃべりしていいよ。じゃあそのロボカプリについて説明して。
これ吸収者。これ警察。もうちょっとで終わる？
まだもっといろいろ話して。
何？
最近何して遊んでるかとか。
どこで？
どこでも。
幼稚園で。幼稚園でいつもブロックで遊んでいます。
This is pretty interesting because he was initially using this and must. We typically use this and must with strangers and people who are older than us. But we usually don't use this and must with close friends and family members. But he said this, 給食いつも食べています using must. He also said 食べています instead of 食べてます which is a more colloquial form and we typically say てます instead of ています in conversation. This means he was speaking more formally because he was talking to the camera. That's why he didn't use a contraction. So he has a contextual awareness and he speaks Japanese differently in different situations because this is not the way he speaks Japanese with his mom. Did you notice that she said, 普通におしゃべりしていいよ? You can talk normally precisely because that's not the way he speaks Japanese normally with his mom. So he dropped this and must and he said, これ救急車 This is an ambulance instead of saying これ救急車です This is an ambulance using this. And he also said もうちょっとで終わる Are we gonna finish this soon? Instead of もうちょっとで終わりますか using must. So もうちょっとで終わる is how he normally speaks to his mom. As you can see, it's important to speak Japanese differently in different situations. And if you want to understand Japanese, it's also important to understand these nuances. That's why kids are already learning this kind of contextual information. But traditionally, textbooks and teachers don't really explain this very well because they don't really teach you how native speakers speak Japanese in different situations. So if you want to learn Japanese with me, I will teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life native Japanese speakers speak differently in different situations so that you can understand and speak Japanese appropriately in every situation. So click on the link in the description and subscribe to my email group. So let's listen to the next girl. She's 5.
今日はいい天気だね。アイスでも食べよう、暑いから。いただきます。おいしい。こっちで食べよう。日陰がいいところ。こっちでもいい。元気で遊ぼうっと。ママ、ご飯食べ終わったよ。こんないい天気にアイスを食べに来たのね。今日こそいい天気にアイスはいいよね。お世話しなきゃいけないのね。わかってる？わかってる。バブ、バブ。
So you can see that she's much more talkative than the first boy. But I've noticed that her sentences are not really adult-like. For example, she said, 日陰がいいところ The shadow is a nice place.But this makes me think, do we actually say this in this context? We typically use いいところ for like specific places like 日本はいいところ Japan is a good place. But with 日陰 shadow, I think we would say something like 日陰はいいね The shadow is nice. So I think her Japanese is still developing. Another sentence is 今日こそいい天気に アイスはいいよね which isn't grammatically wrong, but contextually speaking, the way she uses words like koso or wa doesn't sound very solid. It's also possible that she's pretty extroverted, so she doesn't think first before saying things, so she just says words as they come to her mind. Koso can mean something like finally. For example, you've been wanting to eat ice cream, but maybe it's been cold lately, so it's not really the ideal kind of weather to eat ice cream. But today, it's sunny and it's hot, so you're gonna say, 今日こそアイスを食べよう. I'm gonna eat ice cream finally. So that's how you use koso. This kind of word is very contextual, so I'd guess she probably hasn't had enough input to fully understand the context behind this kind of word. I've also noticed that she used what we call 役割語, which is kind of like a stereotypical ways of speaking Japanese. For example, she said, アイスを食べに来たのね using のね. And she used it again with バブちゃんのお世話をしなきゃいけないのね. And she's using this because this bear is supposed to be a mom. And that's kind of how a stereotypical mom speaks Japanese. And you hear 役割語 a lot in anime, even though real-life Japanese people don't really speak like this. This means that she's already exposed to Japanese in fiction, and she knows how different characters speak Japanese based on their stereotypical roles. So her speech already has a lot of subtle nuances. Now, let's move on to the next girl. She's 6 years old.
保育園楽しい？
うん
何してるときは楽しい？
体育教室が楽しい。
楽しいな。
と ECC は
うん。
英語が
うん。
話し、
うん。
なんか面白いやつやるの。
そうなの？
いつもね、こういう1とか2とかさ、こうやってポテトばさ、じゃがいもば詰めていって、
うん
最後の8番までいったらビシッてなる。それが面白いの。
そうなの？
うん。
うん。大きくなったら何になる？
アイドル。
え？もう一回大きな声で言って。もう一回大きな声で言って。大きくなったら何になるの？
アイドルです。
I actually didn't fully catch what she said because she was speaking a dialect from Nagasaki, which is from a western part of Japan. She said, ポテトばさ、じゃがいもば詰めていって, and this ba is part of her dialect, and we don't use this ba in standard Japanese. And because she's speaking a dialect, some of her pitch patterns are different from standard pitch patterns. She said something like 詰めていって, which sounds like low, high, 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 low. But in standard pitch accent, this would be something like 詰めていって. But at the same time, her mom is actually speaking standard Japanese. I don't really know the exact reason, but it's possible that because she's making a video which a lot of people will watch, maybe she thought it would be better to speak standard Japanese so that everybody can understand. But that's just my guess. And did you notice that she said アイドルです using this when her mom asked her to say it more clearly? This way of using this is pretty interesting because it's kind of like making a statement. When we speak to our family members, we typically don't really use this. But we might use this for this kind of effect sometimes. And she's already acquired this kind of advanced Japanese. Now check out the last girl. She's also 6, but she's a few months older.
好きな色は水色。
なんで？
かわいいから。それで好きなお友達はゆねちゃんとりおちゃん。それでお話ししてる時が楽しいのと、あと最近楽しかったことはディズニーに行ったこと。それでベルが一番楽しかった。
ベルって何？
ディズニープリンセスのベル。なんかカップに乗ってゆらゆらしてなんか物語を見る。 乗り物。
She's actually the first boy's sister, and you can see they have the exact same face, which I find it pretty amusing. And unlike her brother, she just speaks plain Japanese without using des or mas, probably because she's more relaxed. The first boy was pretty nervous. And even though she's not very talkative and she doesn't say much, her sentences are pretty solid. For example, she said, なんかカップに乗ってゆらゆらしてなんか物語を見る乗り物. This is a perfectly natural and well-constructed sentence. If you remove the filler word, なんか, it's probably gonna be good enough for an essay for her school. So as you can see, Japanese kids speak Japanese pretty differently based on their personality and their level of acquisition. And at around their age, they can already speak Japanese differently in different situations. So if you want to learn Japanese with me, I will teach you how to speak Japanese naturally in different situations with different people, from your friends to strangers, unlike simplified textbook versions of Japanese that don't quite have the same complexity, nuances, and ambiguity as natural native Japanese. So click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta.